And good morning. We are back to Tuesday morning, which means that we've got another live training that we're going to be walking through. This week in particular, we are talking about tracking your business. So we're talking about really building on some of the other foundational stuff that we've talked about the past couple of weeks. First week, we really kind of dove into some of the specifics when it came to having a routine and especially having that work routine. Kind of talked about some details as far as making sure that your work day, those first few hours of the morning, were actually spent doing things that you could track that would give you kind of that compounding interest when it came to doing things that would make a difference in your business. Things like making your calls, things like putting stuff in your CRM so you could follow up on a regular basis so people didn't fall through the cracks, those kinds of things. So that was week one. Week two, we dove in a little bit more to the primary tool that we're going to use for a lot of that, your CRM. We talked about what it is, if you didn't have one, choosing one, and then setting it up. Some of the basics as far as just getting clients and contacts into that database so that you could actually then use the tool for what it's meant to be, which is really leveraging your time and saving all of those details from conversations, from communication that you have with these people in a central place. Now, today, what we're going to be talking about, again, is going to build on both of those foundations. Before we jump in, again, just that follow-up from last week's homework, choosing that CRM if you didn't have one already, if you needed to, watching training videos to familiarize yourself with all of those details. Most of the time, CRMs can be very, very complicated. I guess in some ways there's a lot that they can do. You don't have to use everything that's there, but familiarizing yourself with it is strongly recommended. Adding your headshot, your contact info, all of those things that basically make it branded to you, and then importing your contacts into your CRM. So hopefully those things happened. And with that, now we're going to talk a little bit more about the actual measuring of your business. So we're going to really break this down into a few different sections. Why it's important. I don't have the stat right off the top of my head, but when it comes to New Year's resolutions, a lot of people make them. A lot of people like to set goals, but you stand a better chance, a far better chance of actually accomplishing what it is that you want to accomplish if you actually have it written down, if you have a way of measuring yourself against a final outcome. So some of this is knowing sort of where we're headed, but also knowing that the steps that you have to take day to day to day to get you to that final place, all of those have to add up. And if you aren't tracking all of those little steps, it's not going to be as easy to figure out how you got to that end result. Or if you miss that end goal, if you don't hit that number or whatever it is that you were aiming for, what were some of the things along the way that maybe you could do different so that you can leverage yourself, your time, your other resources better? So what we're going to talk a little bit more about why measuring is important. The difference of working on your business versus working in your business. There is a definite difference. And most of the time, business owners get stuck on the in your business, just doing the things every day, but not really taking that step back and being strategic about working through the details of like how your business is actually running. We're going to talk about a tool that you can use, technique, the do, doing, and done categories, give you some examples of that. And then tracking. I've actually got a spreadsheet for you. So this is something that you'll be able to use when it comes to doing some of this tracking if you are not already using your CRM. Some CRMs, I should clarify that point. Some CRMs are very all-inclusive. You can track a ton of different data points, but sometimes you just need a snapshot, and reports in CRMs don't always give that to you. So I've got a spreadsheet that you can use. to help do some of that tracking, to help you kind of keep just that bird's eye view of what's in your pipeline, where your different clients are in their process, all of those details. All right, so why it's important. As a real estate agent, regardless of how long you've been in the business, you've probably figured out that you wear a lot of hats. There is a lot going on, and you're responsible for all of it. You're responsible for taking care of your clients, but you're also responsible for all of the elements of actually running your business. So we're talking about things like vision setting, goal setting, all of those things that it's like, okay, I've got a business, which means that it should be making me money, but how are we actually going to start measuring and tracking how much making, where it's coming from, the types of clients it's coming from, where those leads originated, those sorts of details. You've probably figured out that you've got to be your own marketer. There's nobody out there to sing your praises. You have to do a lot of that work yourself. Now, that being said, going out and just saying, hey, I'm a realtor, do you want to buy a house or sell a house? That's probably not going to get you very far. So when we talk about marketing in our next phase, next month, we'll be deep diving into some of those really basic things that you can be doing on a regular basis that will market yourself effectively. You're the CFO. You are in charge of your finances, and we will be discussing that in greater depth next week. But you're the one who's in charge of monitoring what's coming in, the expenses that you have, trimming expenses if need be, just all of those things, taxes, all of those details that when you're an employee, you really don't think about it. You show up to work, you get a paycheck, and that's that. Like everything else is happening behind the scenes. But when you're working for yourself and you're working as a real estate agent, all of those things now are on your plate. So we're talking about all of the different things that you have to do to just run your business. We're talking about all of the things that you have to do the business of being a real estate agent, showing houses, those kinds of things. So it's definitely one of those details where you want to make sure that you actually are keeping all of that in some kind of balance. Now, when I say balance, I'm not talking 50-50, but understanding that you have to keep an eye on everything, all of those elements of your business in order for something not to completely take you by surprise, for different areas of your business to tank, etc. Your training, when it came to becoming a real estate agent, it included everything that you needed to actually sit down, pass that exam for your state, for your national exam, just all of those details. That's what your training and any real estate school studying that you did, that's where that came into play. But it didn't tell you anything about how to effectively run a real estate business. It didn't tell you about all of these other things or these other skills that you would have to be developing in order to be effective and to be successful in this career. So with that in mind, there's a lot of things that, depending on your background, and everybody's got different strengths that come from their background. Sometimes it's people skills. Sometimes it is like in the business, business skills like monitoring finances and forecasting and all of those kinds of things. So everybody comes to this career with some experience in their past that is going to make part of their job easier. But in general, business skills are not something that either real estate school or most situations where you were previously employed, business skills were probably not a big part of any of those areas of your life. So with that in mind, that is a lot of what we are developing over these 90 days is understanding the habits, the actual actions that are going to make a difference in your business, and then being able to run all of that smoothly, systematize it as much as possible, get you to that point where we are not just kind of taking a stab at being a real estate agent, you're actually running a business. So where does neglecting part of your business lead you? It's a lot of what we're talking about is not necessarily the fun, sexy stuff. It's not, sitting at a closing table every single day. These are the things that you have to do in order to get yourself to that closing table. But if you neglect different aspects of your business, at some point you are going to end up struggling far more than you actually need to. If you aren't making your calls and you aren't doing the lead gen aspect of your business, eventually you're going to get to the point where there's nobody in the pipeline. There's no warm clients. There's nobody that, next month they wanted to start looking at houses, or in a couple of months, or next spring, or whenever that timeline is, you have not been marketing. So now we don't have anybody that is active with you who's a warm lead. If you don't do your marketing, that's one of the things that's going to happen. If you're not doing your lead gen, that's going to happen. If you aren't staying on top of what's going on in your industry, in your area, if you're not monitoring the real estate market, how are you going to be able to stay abreast of what's happening? How are you going to be able to run comps easily for anybody who might be asking you for that kind of detail? All of those different aspects of being a real estate agent, if you let any of those go for too long, you will end up with more of a mess than you really want to. So all of these details, both working on your business and in your business, measuring all of that so you know what's working and you know what's not, that's where we're headed today. So working on versus in your business. So two different concepts. So working in your business is you doing the things that we would think of as normal everyday life for a real estate agent. You might be talking to clients, probably talking to other agents, you're setting showings, you're doing all of these things that you have to do as a real estate agent. That is the job. But again, going back to the idea of working on your business so that it's running smoothly, so that it's not turning into a needy child that's going to just zap every ounce of energy and time that you've got, we're going to be working on some of those things in particular on a regular basis so that it doesn't catch up to you and end up being one of those things where now your business is demanding more time of you than actually serving your clients. So working on your business, some of those things would be marketing, your planning, taking care of your finances on a regular basis. Obviously, lead gen, don't have a business if you don't have leads and clients to work with. Systematizing things. So eventually the hope is that there will be things that can come off your plate and go on to somebody else. But it's going to be a lot easier to actually work with that person and get them caught up to speed on the way that you do things if you've got a system that is behind the way that you do that. Contractors, finding those people, developing relationships with different people in different parts of the industry that you're going to need. This could be lenders, this could be title reps, this could be attorneys, this could be people who are actually going to be helping with inspections. So inspectors, contractors to do different sorts of work, plumbers, electricians, those kinds of people. So working on all of those different things, working kind of behind the scenes, doing all of the things that your business needs to run smoothly, then in turn is going to give you the leverage that you need so that you can work in the business without having issues pop up all of the time. So again, working in the business, that's probably where I would say anywhere from 60 to 75% of your effort is probably going to be located if you are consistently doing everything else that's on this working on your business list. So working in your business, again, showing homes, writing your contracts, attending your inspections and other appointments. Obviously answering email, phone calls, that's kind of more administrative, but it is part of what you have to do in order to communicate effectively with your other agents, with your clients, etc. And then obviously closing. So that's the one that everybody enjoys. That's where things get exciting for your clients. That's where you get paid. So those are the things that I would consider working in the business versus working on the business. Now, the temptation is always going to be letting all of the stuff that you're doing in your business, working directly with clients, working directly on contracts, working specifically on those deals, whatever stage they're in, that is where it's going to be very easy just have all of your time eaten up. And there are going to be days, there might even be weeks where that's pretty much all that you've got time for. Real estate is a very cyclical kind of business. So spring, early summer, and then usually there's a pop in the fall. All of those times, yes, it's going to be crazy, but is it really eating up all of your waking hours, or should it really be eating up all your waking hours? Again, there will probably be some seasons, some days where that happens, but it should not be the norm. It should not be 365 days a year where you are just working and you're client facing. Unless you have a team, unless you have other people that you can already leverage to do some of these other things, all of the working on your business stuff, that has to be something that you factor in regularly. So when it comes to being able to structure that on versus in, understand that these are not competing, that there is going to be fluctuation. Like I said, there are going to be busy seasons where the in your business is going to be a lot. It's going to be pretty much all that you've got time for. Part of that is just understanding there's not going to be a perfect balance. we do not live in a world, and we certainly do not operate within an industry where you can say, okay, from this time to this time, this is exactly what's happening. From this time to this time, that's exactly what's happening. From this time to this time, exactly what's happening. That's the military. That's the way they operate. And in all honesty, that's not the real world in so many ways. So understand that there is balance. You will find things that work for you. You will find the balance that is going to be ideal for you and your business and the stage that you're at. But it's not like it's going to be a 50-50 split. It's not like it's always going to be a 25-75 split. During the busy seasons, you are probably going to be much more client facing. When the market is slower, that is an awesome time to turn your focus more towards working on your business and getting yourself prepared and ahead of the curve so that when the busy season comes, you can turn your attention more towards being in the business without the business itself crumbling behind you. Big part of that, again, this goes to week 1 where we were talking about, treat your day as though you have a work day that happens in the morning. Rest of the time is free time. It doesn't have to be super structured. But if you treat those morning hours to the point where it's like, okay, this is what I do, this is what I do, this is what I do, and you're able to stay fairly consistent with that, what you'll find is that is your devoted on times. That's your hour of power, your morning work hours, your marketing hour. And again, if you are doing all of that consistently, even if it's not an hour exactly, take 20 minutes every single day and just do one next thing when it comes to your marketing. When that happens, what you're going to end up with is, again, just that cumulative effect of over and over and over, you have devoted some time to working on your business, and that is going to compound. It's not like it just adds. You end up having a lot of leverage and a lot of stuff that's being built on what you did previously. You'll find that those devoted times, if you're consistent with them, they are going to give you some big, big rewards. Your schedule, it's set up to work for you. Remember, you are in business for yourself. Now, this doesn't mean that you can ignore client needs, client requests, client timelines, all of those things. But your schedule is set up for you, understanding that you do have control over it, that you are the one in charge of it. Sometimes that can feel overwhelming. I'd really encourage you to look at it as something where it's empowering. You're the one who gets to make those choices. You're the one who gets to choose how much time goes where. You're the one who gets to choose when you rest. All of those things can be put into your schedule because you don't have a boss that you're reporting to. You are in charge of your schedule. So set it up to work for you. And then finally, if you want to grow your business, which don't know why you'd be in business or why you'd be here if you didn't. But if you want to grow, if you want to not have your business drive you absolutely crazy, and if you want to hit those financial goals that you've probably set for yourself, then it is important to set aside that time to work on the business as well as the stuff that's just part and parcel of being a realtor working in your business. So remember all of these different points when we're talking about kind of this tension between on versus in. Both are important. Neither one should be done entirely to the exclusion of the other. There's going to be some give and take between them, but both are important. Without working on your business, you don't really have a business. Without working in your business, you're not going to be making money. So there's no business really to be had. So between those two things, that's where some of that focus and some of that balance can come into play for you. All right, moving on to the next section, the doing, and done. So this is where I recommended getting a whiteboard and where this is going to come into play for us. So the whiteboard it is one of those kinds of things where if you've got a set space where you're able to work, you can leave this out and it's there. It's visual, it's right in front of you a lot of the time, and it is going to help just train your brain to stay focused. We live in a very distracting world. We live in a world where you are bombarded by thousands of ads all the time on all sorts of mediums, whether it's television or radio or social media or internet sites, you name it, there are advertisements there. Can be really good. And most of the time, though, it's really, really distracting. It is easy to find the next thing that somebody promises is going to help revolutionize your business. It is really easy to lose a lot of money when it comes to finding somebody who promises you the moon and the stars through paid advertising online. There's just so much out there that it is easy. It is easy to get discouraged or frustrated with something that you're doing and not see it all the way to completion because, oh my gosh, we've got something bright and shiny here. And there's this promise and it fizzles out eventually too. So this visual reminder keeps track of what it is that you want to do, what it is that you are currently doing, and then what it is that you've done. So we're keeping track of ideas. We're staying focused on what's in that center column, that doing, what you're active on right now, and then remind yourself of what you've accomplished. It is so easy to go through a day, go through a month, go through a week, and not feel like anything got done. This is one of those reasons why having a done column and being able to move stuff there gives you that sense of accomplishment. Some of it's going to be more long term. Some of it's going to be something you can accomplish in a few days or weeks. So it's one of those kinds of things where you get to set this up, but I wanted to give you sort of a demonstration of how this might look. So we've got the how of your do, doing, and done. So initial step, go through and brain dump everything that it is that you want to do. You may find some things that now you can group together and get a couple of them done at the same time. You may find some stuff is like either redundant or not really a high priority. So having all of that out in this, at some point I'd like to do it category will help you at least be able to see and get stuff out of your head. So for example, need to get contacts into my CRM. I need to set up a Facebook page. I need to create a list of video ideas. I should write out my transaction steps for sellers. I should make a list of clients' closing gifts. So when you get to the closing table, you're not scrambling trying to figure it out. You've got a list that you've made and you've got a few ideas there and you can just go with it. And then you're also realizing that you need to find a couple handymen. You've got a great plumber, you've got a great electrician, you've got a great roofer. Every now and then you just have somebody who's got a whole bunch of small things. They come and they ask you, who do you know? You want to have a couple of those guys so that you can refer them out. You're doing. So this is what I'm active on. This could be per week. This could be per month. Again, it could be a longer term project. Say you wanted to host an event. This is going to be in your doing. You probably are not going to have all of the steps for every single one of these written out in this column, but at least it's there. It's sitting in front of you. You can look at it and it's like, oh yeah, this is what I said I wanted to be working on. What's the next thing that I can be doing for that? So in my doing column, I might be saying that I am writing my email drip campaigns, customizing those. Next step obviously would be to actually get them into the CRM, but you got to start with writing them. So I'm writing my email drip campaigns. I set up a business bank account. Again, we'll go into a lot more of this next week, but having a specific bank account set aside for the business is one of the best practices that you can train yourself in. And then writing out the transaction steps for buyers. Now, you might notice over there in that do column, I had put write out transaction steps for sellers. Guess what? I'm not working with any sellers right now, but I have worked with a couple buyers and I've started to recognize that there are things that I have done consistently in both of them. And I'm going to start writing out those steps so that when it comes to remembering to send this type of email, I'm not having to think about it. My brain is not having to be stressed. By keeping all of those steps in, I can actually now look at a list that I've created. Again, a lot of CRMs are capable of helping you track all of that so that you can put your system in and then, it will remind you when steps are due. But if you don't have that sophistication yet, just start with creating a list of those steps when you're working with buyers. And then am I done category? So say I wrote this list back at the beginning of back in June, I wrote this list. These are the things that I have accomplished up to this point. I found the title rep that I really, really like. She's great. She's thorough, came highly recommended. I'm going to be working with her for this foreseeable future. I created and sent a campaign for CMAs. So this is one of those things that you can send out to homeowners and just let them know that, hey, obviously the market is doing really interesting things right now. People are gaining equity that they just have no idea about. Would they like an updated CMA? I found a couple of inspectors that I want to work with when I'm working with buyers. Obviously, we've got inspections that have to happen. So I've got a couple of people that I can now call. They've got great prices, great flexibility, great reviews. Those are the two that I'm going to be using for right now. If I need to find another one eventually, awesome. But that at least is checked off. It's done. And I created my contract template. So rather than filling in everything every single time, every single field when it comes to creating a contract, I've got a contract for my buyers, contract for my sellers. When it comes to the agency agreement, so when they sign with you, you can have templates for the actual contract itself. You can have a contract for different addendums that you might need to add. So I got that contract template created. Since I've worked with a couple buyers, I've been through it several times now. I know it needs to be filled out, and I found some verbiage that I really, really liked. So I created a template there. So as you can see here, this is purely hypothetical. Some of these things you might actually want to put on your list, but for the most part, this is one of those kinds of things where this is very specific to you. Depending on your stage of business, some of this might already be done. But essentially what we are doing is we are getting stuff out of your head. We're getting it into a place where you can see it on a regular basis, and we're getting it so that you can actually see that progression and that accomplishment as stuff is happening. So moving on then to really what is kind of the final stage of this particular lesson. And that is the actual tracking that you are going to do. Now, like I mentioned, there is a lot that can happen within your CRM. Perfectly fine. One of the things that it can't do most of the time, though, is like give you in detail a sense of like how many of your conversations you had on this day, and that turned into this many appointments or referrals. It can't necessarily track all of that in one concise report that you would be able to print out. So when we're talking about this, again, this goes back to that idea. You can't improve what you don't measure. You stand a far greater chance of being able to actually accomplish what it is that you want if you go through the process of actually writing it down, which is where that doing and done board comes into play. You're writing it down, you're able to see it, and then from there, being able to figure out what's working, get rid of what doesn't, do more of what does. So, key metrics that we want to track. And again, this is not super high level. We are not going for minute detail. We are going for what are those basic building blocks of your lead generation specifically that is going to get you to understand more of a picture of, again, what's working and what's not. So some of those metrics would be, again, conversations. You have to talk to people somehow. That could be in your DMs. That could be on the phone. That could be via text. That could be at a networking event. There are hundreds of ways that you can actually have conversations. Now, those conversations, we want them to lead to appointments. How many appointments did you set? How many of those actually happened? And how many of those converted into actually having a signed client, buyer or seller? We want to make sure that we are tracking those leads and that we've got a pipeline. So one of the really interesting things with real estate is it's a very long life cycle. You can meet with a buyer who's ready to go out tomorrow. They're already pre-approved, they are ready to go, and they're going to start shopping tomorrow. They've already got, the list of everything that they want in their house. They're reasonable. They're not, asking for the moon and the stars at a price point that, nobody's heard of. So it's one of those kinds of things where you can have that type of client. You could have somebody who is thinking about selling their house, but they want to get through the holidays, so they're probably thinking next spring. That's still a warm lead. You still want to stay in touch with that person. You still want to give them updates. If they've got 6 months between when they're meeting with you and when they plan to list their home, there's probably home projects that they might want to be spending some time on. So you can be the supplier of, again, having those contractor relationships. Now you've got people who do good work, and you can refer them on to those sellers who will be listing in another few months. So it's one of those kinds of things where your pipeline is really what we're looking at when we are saying, okay, these are the people who are interested in doing something with real estate, and here's kind of their time frame of when they're wanting to be active. So that would kind of be that leads and pipeline piece. And then units, volume, and GCI. So units, number of homes bought and sold. Volume is the sales price added up. So if you bought or had a couple of buyers, the seller, and each of the buyers bought for $250 and the seller sold for $500, you've now got $1 million in GCI, or I'm sorry, in volume. So the volume is just that gross sold price. GCI is the commission that you made off of those sales. Here in Colorado, that is roughly 3% per side. Different states are different brokerages handle it differently. You might have different things that you've decided on when it comes to your commission. I would strongly recommend you not go through and just try to be the lowest commission out there. If all you're doing is competing on price and you are not expressing your value to potentials and buyers and sellers, there's always going to be somebody who is willing to outbid you. So working on a value proposition is probably going to be one of the other things that we'll talk about here in the coming weeks. But understanding that when it comes to commission, best practice is going to be to not just try and operate off of the most cutthroat commission that you can offer. So those are the things that we are going to track. And as I mentioned, I do have a spreadsheet for you. So whether you've got your CRM set up or not, this spreadsheet can either serve as something that you can use to track until your CRM is set up, or you can use it in conjunction with your CRM. So there is going to be that spreadsheet. Note what's going on within these categories as you're making your calls. So if I were you, or if I was setting up a schedule for myself, first thing that I would do is close the internet because more than likely I don't have to have that. I'd have my CRM opened if that was the only thing that I was on the internet for. Okay, leave that open. And then I would have this spreadsheet set up as well, so that as I'm going through and as I'm making the 20 calls that I set out for myself today, from there, I am then turning that into notes that I'm making on my spreadsheet. You know, I made 20 calls. Out of that, I got 2. I actually talked to 2 people, had 0 appointments actually set, but one of them did mention that their neighbor had been talking about it. So that's something to follow up on. So potential referral, that would go in that referral column. So as you're going through this, again, takes it out of your brain, puts it on paper, you can see it, you can track it, and you don't have to keep everything in that brain. And then start tracking where the conversion isn't as high as you think it could be. Now, if you are just starting out, there's probably a lot of phone skills, communication skills, the skills from being able to move a conversation from, just catching up to business. All of those are skills that will need to be developed. I will be providing some of those to you, so check out the links underneath this video in the course materials, and you'll be able to find some of those things. But it is going to be one of those areas where our goal, once we start tracking and we can start either seeing trends or we can see where things aren't as good as they could be, now you've actually got an area you can focus on, get to the point where it's like, oh, yeah, okay. So now I know that it's not so much having the conversation, it's being able to move from conversation to appointment or conversation to referral. It's not so much that I'm not getting appointments, it's that I am not getting from an appointment to a closed client. People are not wanting to move forward with me as their agent. So what is that about? And you're now able to figure out, okay, here are some things that I could change so that I can actually start getting some of these appointments locked into being clients. So tracking is what gives you that ability to not just try and think and try and remember what's going on or what happened. You're actually able to now see that story being told through your numbers. So what you'll find in this spreadsheet, there's a couple different tabs that you're going to use. The first one is that business tracker, and this truly is just going through, this is your date column, this is how many conversations you've had, this is where it turned into a listing appointment or a buyer's appointment, on and on and on. Now, what's going to happen is as you go through and fill this out, this little area to the side will start getting filled with totals from those columns. So say you had 20 conversations 5 days in a row, you're going to see that you had 100 conversations this week, which is pretty fantastic. So it's going to be one of those things where some of these fields are going to populate and total and do the math for you. All you have to do is fill it out. And then the second one is more of the pipeline. So this is going to be your second tab. And essentially what this is going to do is when we move somebody from, hey, we had a conversation, to actually an appointment or a referral, we're now going to move them into this pipeline where it's like, yes, there is somebody interested in either buying or selling or investing in real estate. And so then you're going to go through and you are going to fill out all of these columns, their name, buyer, seller, are they a renter or a landlord looking to fill a house? What's their time frame? That's going to be this column here. And then we've got things like their estimated purchase price, commission, what that commission ends up being for you. So this is commission percentage, this is commission dollar amount based on that estimate. So as you can see, this one is going to be doing pretty much the same thing. Now, not pictured here, and I will give a video walkthrough of that spreadsheet in detail. You'll find all of that again uploaded in your course materials. But underneath this section here is an area where it tracks your active, your pending, and your sold or your closed clients. So once we get up here and we say, okay, this client, their status is now that they're active. They are actively looking, or they are actively getting their home ready, listing, or on the market, etc. Once that status moves to pending, now we are going to move them. It's going to automatically populate them into that pending category, so that you can now see, okay, these are the 3 clients that I've got who are under contract. That requires a totally different set of business practices, managing all of those clients who are under contract. So that's kind of that next stage. And then once they get switched to closed, essentially at that point, you're golden. They are now they're now past clients at that point. They move into, you need to keep in touch with them, stay in touch with things like offering, again, handyman people and resources that they're probably going to need within those first few months of home ownership. Or if they've sold, staying in touch with them and figuring out other ways that you can be of value to them. So that's what both of these tabs in this spreadsheet will be. Again, it's going to be in the course itself, so it should be underneath this video in the course materials. But then also there is this section at the end of this, this entire course where you can find all of those materials. They're all going to be in that one section as well. So just to harken back again, love James Clear, rely on a lot of his research and a lot of the information that he has provided when it comes to habits, habit building, and just making life work more smoothly. And a lot of this is kind of super practical, and at the same time, the sort of stuff that we just don't like hearing. So this one came through in one of his newsletters where he said, you don't need a better computer to become a writer. You don't need a better guitar to become a musician. You don't need a better camera to become a photographer. What you need to do is get to work. And again, this whole process that we are walking through, these are not the kinds of things that you're probably going to wake up just absolutely pumped and excited to do. But the more that you just get to work, the more that you are able to override that part of your brain that tells you that it's not making any difference, that it's boring, that it's overwhelming, whatever it is, all of those different things that your brain is going to throw up in your face and just try and slow you down. Those are the things where essentially you just ignore the brain and you just get to work. So that would be my encouragement this week. We've truly built the past 3 weeks now some really foundational steps that you can put into place. And again, start small. You do not have to do calls for an entire hour. If you have never been on the phone for that long, That is a lot of talking. That is a lot to be doing. Start with 20 minutes a day, but be consistent with those 20 minutes a day. Use this tracking spreadsheet, put information in your CRM, all of those different things. Now they are starting to work in tandem, and hopefully you can start to see the compound effect of starting and just being consistent with these small things. So, in closing, oh, this is week 3, not week 2. So week 3 homework, that will be corrected. Create your do, doing, and done categories. So go back to some point this year, whether that was, a few months ago, whether that's the beginning of the year, whether that's when you got your license. Regardless of what that date is, go through and actually list the things that you have done. Did you sign up with a brokerage? Yes. Did you sign up for this course? Yes. Did you do some of these things already that you know that you've accomplished, but just haven't recognized as being accomplished? Fill out that done category. Then we're going to go through and we're going to say, okay, what's everything in the do? Do you want to have a client event? A pie giveaway, say, or is there relationships that you need to foster? Do you need to find a particular kind of contractor? Do you need to systematize your entire process for going through a transaction with a client? Do you need to create templates? Do you need to what have you? At this point, hopefully some of those things have already been done, but do you still need to get your clients and your contacts into your CRM? If so, put that in that do category. Everything that you can think of for the time being that, say in the next year you want to accomplish, put it in that do. Now, again, this is where you can start looking at it. You can group those things that really go together so that you're not reinventing the wheel. You can start to see, okay, here's a few easy things that I could knock off of this list really fast. What I would recommend is probably not having more than 3 to 5 things in your doing category. Again, some of these will be short term, some of these will be much longer term, but what you want to be doing is making sure that whatever is in that column, that doing column, that you are being focused, specific. All of this other stuff is over here waiting for you. You could be doing this, but you've chosen to prioritize and specifically focus on these things. So that doing category is where most of your focus needs to be. Once you move something off, now you can think about putting something new in there. And then also use the spreadsheet to track your business activities this week. So this is specifically in reference to any of the phone calls and conversations that you are having right now, as well as, you could have several clients that you're just kind of keeping in the back of your mind saying, okay, they told me that they might want to buy or sell next year. They told me that they've got, a kid who's graduating college and is moving to this city. And so, I should probably be in touch with them. All of those things now put in that pipeline section of the spreadsheet. Put that in there so that you are not having to try and remember everything. Now you can see in one fell swoop, name, what type of client they will likely be, purchase price, any other details and notes that you need to. All of those things can now live in that pipeline spreadsheet. And then finally, in a couple of days, we will be back here and really kind of talking through any challenges that you're having with, honestly, anything in the last 3 weeks. So if that's something specific that we need to focus in on, if we need to actually get some work done while we're on the call, awesome. But that is going to be this coming Thursday, so a couple days from now at 12 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. You can access that link in the call section, and an email will also be sent to you 30 minutes to 60 minutes before that call takes place. So best of luck to you in this new week. Let me know if you have any questions. Again, you can email me, Anna, ANNA, at VIVIFIconsulting.com. If you've got any questions at all, I'll be happy to answer them, happy to jump in and help you continue to make progress. Have a good one. Bye.